So we're all sitting around a table, and I said, "Hey, Mom, did you ever really wonder if I was your child?" I just Welcome back to the Fronczak Files. I'm your host, Paul Fronczak.
And I'm your co-host, Tracy Hastings.
Hey, Tracy.
Hey, how's it going?
Here we go again. Ready to dig into this journey?
Yeah, already on episode 3. Hard to believe. Sort of
I can't
flying
believe
by,
it.
huh?
It's crazy. So if you were listening and following along on this journey, then you know exactly where we are. If you haven't, stop, go back to episode 1, and bring it back to where we are now, because you can't miss anything on this journey. So we last left off, I was at a CVS drugstore buying an identity paternity kit. I finally decided, hopefully, to ask my parents to do a DNA test with me to see if I was actually Paul Fronczak. So, Tracy, set the scene where we are.
Well, this is 2012. So technology's come a long way since the kidnapping and the recovery. And this is sort of the definitive way to figure out who you are. And I think people were starting to think about that at that time when these things were becoming available over the counter. And it wasn't exorbitantly expensive either to have it done. And so you, I'm sure, were one of many who spied paternity test on the shelf and thought, let me see if this works.
Yeah, because, before that, Michelle and I, my wife at the time, decided that maybe if we got some hair samples from my parents, we could do a DNA test. Because believe it or not, this has been haunting me my whole life, right? But it wasn't until like the last maybe 15 years or so that we started actually realizing that maybe we could get a test done that was affordable. So we joked about my parents would go to church on Sundays when they came out and visited us. So we'd get a little Ziploc baggie and get the hairs off their pillows. I was like, this is great. I could send this in, right? And I'm like, who am I going to send it to?
Right.
Because back then, you had to be a criminal or something in order to have your DNA checked, right?
Sure. Or the only thing that you could test a hair follicle was for drugs. So I guess you could have tested your folks for drugs, but not for DNA.
Right. So we kind of scrapped that idea. I think I still have that bag full of hair laying around somewhere. But then when I saw the CVS identigene kit, I thought, this is it. I can actually maybe get an answer now. So it was a big step, but it was everything was leading up to that moment. And, people don't, okay, if you heard my story on another podcast, they brush over this and they go right into the actual results and all that stuff. But what you don't think about is what you're actually thinking about. And I've met a lot of people along this journey who have no idea who they are. And they're scared to death to take that first step, to start that journey to find out who they actually are. It's not easy. Even if you think in your mind that this is exactly what I want to do, it's easy, I'm just going to do it. There are so many factors, so many human factors involved with that, right? How are people feeling? How's your family going to take it? How are you going to take it? A lot of people end up needing therapy and stuff like that. And I don't think I do at this point, but you never know, things could change. But anyway, so I decided a long time ago that I was going to find a way to find out if I was truly Paul. And this test was going to do it. So I bought it, brought it home, put it in the cabinet, and then it sat there. My parents came out a few more times since then, and I thought, I've got to do this. I've got to get them to take this test. But how do you do it? Your parents love you. You love them. You never talk about the kidnapping. It's very upsetting. It was a tragedy that was never solved. So they came out in July, and they wanted to see Emma. So we're hanging out. They were out probably for a week. And I had that kit just sitting in the closet in the bathroom. And I thought, I've got to do this, right? But, days go by, you're having fun, everything's great. And the last thing you want to do is spring something like that on them. So that was about an hour before I was going to take them to the airport. And I thought, this is it. If I don't do it now, I don't know when I'm going to have the chance to do this. So we're all sitting around a table. And as Michelle describes it, it was like I was going to order a pizza. It was that fluent.
I guess that doesn't surprise me about you, that you did it with a little bit of flair, did it with some humor.
Yeah. Sitting around, my dad was doing something. My mom was in the kitchen. I said, hey, Mom, did you ever really wonder if I was your child? I just put it out there. And I think I got her so off guard. She's like, yeah, we thought about it. I said, well, what if we had a way to find out for sure if I'm really Paul? Would you do it? And she's like, yeah, probably. So I ran to the closet. I got that identigene kit. I put it on the kitchen table, and my dad, I don't think he knew what the hell was happening. And we're popping open these kits, and the next thing you know, they're swabbing away, and I'm sealing it up. And in my mind, I was thinking, this is it. I was taken back to the crawl space and the big score looking for the Christmas presents. Like, this was the big score. After all this time, we're
This
going
was
to find out.
35 years later. You're in this moment of, I'm going to find out. Wow. Yeah.
I mean, we're right
What a-
there. We're on the cusp, right?
Yeah.
We're going to get an answer. I wasn't even thinking about the outcome. I just wanted to get that kit. I wanted to get it sealed up and mail it off.
Before anyone changed their mind, right? Including you.
Yeah, which I don't think I would have, because I've been thinking about that for a long time, but still, you never know, right?
Sure.
So we sealed it up. I put it on my desk, and I was just elated. I was so happy. I was walking on clouds. My parents didn't say a word, and I had to take them to the airport. It was only about a 15, 20-minute drive, but it felt like it took 2 weeks. They didn't say a word. It was just a quiet, very quiet ride.
Mhm.
I get them to the airport. They're getting out. We hug and say goodbye and everything. But it was like the kind of goodbye where it's like, this is a final goodbye. Like, we're never going to talk to you again.
Your instincts were telling you they weren't happy about this. It doesn't sound like. A quiet ride is never a good one.
Right. I kept, I was trying to make it light, but inside I was like, this is awesome. They go back to Chicago. I go back home. I'm happy, right? I'm, whistling Dixie at this point, whatever that means. And I get a phone call about 4 hours later. I'm like, oh, it's my parents. They called. My mom said, we don't want you to mail that in. You're our son. We don't want to know the answer. Just drop it.
Ouch.
I'm like, okay, let me think about it, whatever I said in the moment, because I didn't want to upset them. We said goodbye, and we hung up. And that was it. I mean, in my mind, I was going to mail that thing off. Michelle had a different plan. She was like, you have to honor your parents' wishes. You can't mail that in. Just forget about it. You're Paul. You're my husband. You're Emma's dad. Just let it go. And so I put it in my desk drawer, and it sat there for about a week, maybe even 2 weeks. I passed that desk 100 times a day. And I kept thinking, I want to get an answer. I don't want to piss off my parents. Right? So you're wrestling with that. Finally, I'm getting ready to go to work one morning. I just grabbed it. I walked across the street to the mailbox. I said, you know what? I've got to do this. I've come too far. I need an answer. And I go to put it in the mailbox. And sure as shit, it gets stuck halfway in.
One of those blue freestanding ones with the handle on it?
Yeah.
So you're trying to get them to go in, and they jammed?
It was like the universe giving me a final test.
Sure.
Are you sure you want to do this? If you want to do it, you're going to have to work for it. You're going to have to beat this box into that mailbox.
It was your one last chance to turn back.
The funny thing, I think I looked at the sky and said, what the fuck?
Right.
So I looked at the mailbox and I just punched it in, and I heard it go clunk to the bottom. I think I stood there for a minute looking at that mailbox going, there's no turning back. This is it.
No.
I'm finally going to get the answer after all these years, after all this time. Right? And
so you said this was the summer. This was in July?
It was in July, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long did it take for those results to come back?
Here's the crazy part, right? Thinking back, it felt like it was only weeks. I actually didn't get the results back until October 15th, 2012. It took that long because, nowadays, if Ancestry was taking, what is that? 4 or 5 months to get your stuff back.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, they wouldn't have any customers.
Sure.
Right? It'd be we got to close down. We're taking 6 months to get results. Yeah, it took that long. And the way I got the results were crazy. Do you want to know how I got them?
Yeah, tell us about how that happened.
So I was at work at the Art Institute at my desk, and my phone rang, my cell phone. So I answered it. It was a guy's voice. He said, "Is this Paul Fronczak?" And I said, "Yes." He asked me a couple of security questions. He said, "This is so-and-so with identigene. We have your results." I said, "Okay." And
How
he
did
said this
how
thing.
did you how did you feel right then when you heard those words? We
I
have
was
your
excited.
results.
I mean, I've been waiting how long for this now?
Yeah,
My God,
months. Yeah.
years, right?
Yeah,
So
months,
I'm finally going
years,
to get the
forever.
results. He said, "There's no remote possibility that you're the child of Chester and Dora Fronczak." And even though I knew it since I was a young kid, all of a sudden you hear it and you know it's real and there's no turning back.
Yeah,
I felt
you can't unhear that. You
you
can't.
can't unhear it.
Yeah,
And all of
you
a
can't.
sudden, my life just flashed before my eyes. Everything I thought I knew about myself just vanished, right? The first thing you think of is, how old am I? Am I really
Yeah.
this old?
When's
My
my
second thought,
birthday? Yeah, like
was I,
all the
was I
questions
really
about yourself.
Polish? I mean, I never really
Yeah.
felt Polish. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, it's like, you start to think about all these things, right? And then the most thing, I mean, was I a Taurus? I had zero Taurus compatibility things. I mean,
You're absolutely not a
I'm
tourist.
not a Taurus, not at
No,
all. I mean, any horoscope specialist would have told me that years ago. I could
for
have saved the
sure.
money on identity and just saw a
You could have just, yeah,
horoscopologist.
went to one of those folks to tell you how it was.
Right, right. So there it was. I finally got the answer that I knew, but I just wasn't ready for, I guess. I hung up the phone and I just sat at my desk in shock. After a couple of minutes, I called Michelle and I said, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. I know nothing about my life. Everything that everyone else takes for granted, I don't have that. I don't have anything right now.
You
And
didn't
she
even
took,
have a name. You didn't have an age. You didn't have an ethnicity. You didn't have parents. Do I have siblings? Yeah, no information at all about yourself.
and the real reason I started that, if we think back, is that I wanted to get a medical history on myself for my daughter.
Right. You
Was I being an
definitely don't know
authentic
that.
father to her?
Right.
Yeah. So Michelle took the opposite approach completely. She's like, "You know exactly who you are. You're Paul Fronczak. You're my husband. You're Emma's dad. That's all you need to know."
But that's not all you need to know.
That didn't help me at all.
That's a simple answer to a very complicated question. And I think that happens to people when they find themselves in similar situations to you, the people around them. They sort of just they don't want to look at it. They don't want to deal with it. So they just tell you it's okay. It doesn't matter. None of that matters to us. We know who you are, you know who you are, but it matters to you. And that's what really counts.
The only thing that we have authentically in our lives is our identity.
Absolutely.
That's it. A wolf can leave its pack for years and come back to that pack, and they know each other. They're always welcome back into that pack. We as humans we're the same, right? I mean, we have an identity and that's it. And when that's taken away, you have nothing.
Yeah.
And so,
If you identify as you said, Polish, Irish, French, is that really my history? Is that really where I come from? Right down to the core of who you are as a human being.
so I finished out my day at work and I went home. And of course, Michelle and I had a long conversation about
Oh boy.
everything. Yeah, it wasn't one of the better conversations
I can
because I
imagine.
knew in my mind already what I had to do. The only thought I had was, I want to find the real Paul. My parents were amazing people. They raised me. They gave me this wonderful life. And they had this tragedy happen to them that was never solved. So how can I repay them? I know. I can find their kidnapped child. And that's the only thought I had. So I had the results. I think they came in on a Saturday. I mean, no, they came in during the week, but then it was the weekend and we were sitting around thinking about what to do.
Yeah.
How can I solve this? I'm just a guy. I'm one guy. I don't have a team. I don't have specialists.
Mm-hmm.
DNA was just getting started then, back in 2012. It wasn't this craze that it is now. Everyone's getting DNA tested and everything. So I thought there's only one possible thing I can do. I can use the one medium that my parents hated with all their hearts, the news.
Yeah.
I had to go to the news because how else can I cast a wide net to try to bring in clues, tips, find the answer, and find the real Paul? That's all I wanted to do. So I
And
remember it was
again,
just,
you find yourself in a situation where you're probably pushing your parents into a pretty uncomfortable position here in your
well,
quest to
I still haven't even
figure
told
this
them I got
out.
the results
Yeah.
back.
But when you're thinking about what you're going to do, and then you've mentioned several times, I was thinking about my parents and that the fear and the hate that they had for the media, that their exposure when the baby was kidnapped, that could drag them right back into it again. And you were very aware of that.
But I looked at it on the flip side. I'm like, who else can get the word out to get the national attention that we need in order to try to find this kidnapped child? I thought it was easy. I thought it's a slam dunk. But who to
Sure.
contact? I had
Yeah.
no idea who to contact. I sat down and then I'm an X-Files guy, Twilight Zone, Roswell, all those things. There's only one reporter in the world that covers that and does it well, and that was George Knapp. George Knapp is a local reporter here in Las Vegas, worked for KLAS TV. He cracked Area 51. He did this whole thing with Bob Lazar about how they found all these things at the Roswell crash and they reverse
Yeah.
engineered them, which I totally, I've got books, Roswell, everything around here, right? X-File tattoos. I mean, it's a part of my life. So I just sat around on October 21st. I had gotten the results back on October 15th. So within that week, I just sat down and I hammered out an email to George. I found his email address on KLAS TV's website. I sent him like 3 or 4 sentences, this is my name. The FBI said, well, not the FBI, this paternity test said I am not this kidnapped child that the FBI said I was. I want to find the real Paul. He got back to me in about a half an hour.
I'm sure he did. I'm guessing he doesn't get many emails like that. So
I'm
yours
sure he
probably,
did. I mean, probably with
I,
aliens and things.
I'm looking to figure out who I am. I mean, unless you thought you were an alien, but uh, he probably looked at that and thought, oh, this is interesting. I got to figure this out. What's going on here?
So he responded with one sentence, I want to meet you.
I bet he did.
And that was it. And that started our relationship. We started meeting. And as a matter of fact, we're going to have George on the show today. So I'll leave
That's
the rest of that for when the
yeah,
man himself actually
yeah.
comes in.
So exciting that he's able to join us today
I'm
for this
so
episode.
excited. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So on this episode of the Fronczak Files, we're joined by a man who's not only one of the most respected investigative reporters in the country, but someone who played a crucial role in my own journey, George Knapp. George is an award-winning journalist known for tackling the stories most reporters shy away from. Whether it's government cover-ups, unsolved mysteries, or the truth behind the headlines. You know him from KLAS TV here in Las Vegas, and from his deep dives on Coast to Coast AM. But to me, George is a guy who stood by me when I discovered I wasn't really Paul Fronczak. He helped me tell my story when the world was just starting to learn the truth. He did it with honesty, compassion, and the kind of fearless reporting he's known for. So today, we're turning the mic on the man who's usually asking the questions. This is George Knapp, unfiltered, uncensored, and right here on the Fronczak Files. Hey, George, first of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang out with us at the Fronczak Files. So greatly appreciated. I know you're a busy guy. You got the show on Netflix. You're doing Skinwalker Ranch. You got all kinds of stuff going on. You're just probably the busiest guy in the business.
As you can see, I really cleaned the place up and fancied it up so I could make a good impression for you, Paul, because we go way back.
I thought the files were just for our benefit.
No, this is the way the whole house looks. This is the good room. This is the decorated room.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well,
Sure,
thanks for being
glad
here,
to.
George. So you and I started way back in 2012. So I wanted to see, do you remember when I first shot you that first email?
Well, I can tell you, I remember reading that email, and it was like a flash of light in my head. I get 2,000 or 3,000 emails a day, and maybe sometimes more. And just it takes hours just to read through them, let alone respond. As soon as I read that, it was like a bolt of lightning in my head. This is a story here, and I called you right away. I mean, it was I don't do that. I don't do it. But it hit me like a punch in the face. This is a big story, and it just reeked of optimism and genuine sincerity. You weren't overselling it. It was a very simple email, as I recall. It was pretty bare bones bare bones about the story, and it was an immediate reaction I had. This is real. I need to jump on this right now. I've been a reporter a long time, more than 40 years, and there's only a couple of stories that stand out that just literally sort of walked in the door. One was the UFO story that got me down this rabbit hole, and the other was yours. And it starts with an email and then a phone call. And, I was cocky about both of those stories. I figured, well, I'm a reporter. I'll get to the bottom of this stuff and figure it out. And of course, a lot of years later, there's still a lot of mysteries involved in both of those topics. Yours, I don't know if you remember, but I told you, yeah, we'll help you out. We'll figure this out. We'll get to the bottom of it. And, here it is 13 years later, still chasing different
Oh, it's
leads and
crazy.
stuff.
It's funny. I remember when I first emailed you, you responded really, really fast. And you said simply, I want to meet you. And that made me so happy because I was in this rough place where I had no idea who I was. And I thought the only way out would be to get help from the media. And to me, media is you. There's nobody else. And so when you were so open and willing to meet with me, that was like a game changer. And I was so naive back then. I thought, you know what? I'll meet with George. We'll solve this in a week or two, and it'll be
I
great.
was in the same spot. I get a lot of messages now, even more after that Netflix thing that you mentioned. A lot of emails. I mean, the first 2 hours of my day are going through emails every day. But back then, as soon as I read it, I knew, boy, this sounds different from anything I've ever heard before. And then talking to you, I knew that this was going to be a great story. I didn't know it would be this big or have this many different tentacles to it. But I figured, I really was cocky like you, figured we can figure this out. And wow, what a tangled web we weaved there.
Man, it's when I first met you, first of all, you're a legend. So to actually be talking with you and then telling you this crazy story, I remember when I was telling you, your face just kept going, what? What? You're kidding me, right?
And remember back then, it was a strange story to begin with. We didn't know how strange it was going to get. Good gosh, you've written 2 books about it. There could be 3 or 4 more. All the different angles it took and twists and turns. There's never been a story like it. Other than the UFO mystery, which has its own drama, this is one of my favorite stories and biggest stories I've ever covered. And it was so much fun doing it. It was also troubling at times, to see what you were going through at the different stages of the investigation and how it affected your life. Changed you forever.
So George, when you first met me, how would you sum me up when I first said hi to you?
Well, I found you to be credible. I have a pretty good gut in terms about people because I deal with a lot of folks who make outrageous claims, and you got to make some judgments along the way, even if it's kind of internal. And I believed you right off the bat. I could tell you weren't trying to pull a scam. You weren't. You were sincere about trying to figure this out. It was obviously an emotionally powerful series of questions that you had, and I was impressed by it. And you had hair the same color as mine, so it was. Even though you were a young guy back then, I liked you right off the bat, and I got to meet your daughter and your family, and I liked them too. So. I felt good going into it. I felt good about your story. I didn't think you were trying to pull something. It seemed like your interest in getting to the bottom of these mysteries, plural, was sincere.
So did you think in your mind that it would be a quick solve, that we could just maybe do a couple of FOIA requests and just close it
I
out?
figured once it got out on the media, on television, people would come forward with bits and pieces of information, and we'd solve it, boom, boom, like that. It certainly didn't end up that way.
No, it didn't. It's funny. I remember talking with you. We had several talks because you wanted to plan out the best way to roll this out. Because I remember verbatim what you said to me. You said, "Be careful what you wish for. When this hits, it's going to be a shitstorm."
Yeah.
Is that a
And
direct quote?
it was, and
Very
you weren't
close.
lying. You were not
we
lying.
took our time a little bit. I think you called me at the end of 2012, and then we didn't go on the air until somewhere in early 2013 with the story. I don't remember the exact date.
Yeah, and until a day before Paul's birthday on April 25th.
So we took our time, and I really thought, look, I didn't know a lot about DNA genealogy research or anything, but I thought, well, that's one place to go. I really just felt the power of the news media at the time putting that out. I assumed it was going to be picked up nationally. I had no idea how big that story would get all over again, I should say. You know, the Fronczak kidnapping was a gigantic story, international news, and then we made international news again. I remember the flurry of major media interest as soon as those stories hit. We were deluged by people who saw the same thing that I saw, is that how big and how interesting and how strange that story was. It was a whirlwind, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And I remember how you handled it. Like you were like, okay, we need to get a DNA test, right? I think you went down to
Right,
Ancestry. You did a tour of
right.
their place because back in 2012, that's when DNA really started just
Yeah.
coming out. So our case was like one of the OG
Yeah, I had
cases.
never done anything like that before. I knew very little about DNA other than that the police at the time were making progress in old cases, cold cases, things like that. So going to Ancestry, meeting those folks, they were very helpful to us. And they were the big Megillah at the time. They were the only game in town, as I recall. There was no 23andMe back then. And I think there's another DNA lab in there. We figured, well, at a minimum, if the publicity doesn't solve this, the DNA research will. Man, it got pretty complicated though in a hurry.
It was crazy. So I think you gave me the first DNA test I ever took.
On camera.
And I remember it took so long to get any results. Remember
Yeah.
back then?
It,
Now they have it down to like a couple of weeks, I think, but it was a long time. I remember we kept waiting and checking.
we did it on camera too. Just and we've used that video in 30 stories since then. And yeah, I thought it would be quicker than that, but I had no real experience with it. And it was excruciating. The wait was just excruciating. But you've been waiting a lot longer than that for some answers.
I'm still waiting. Yeah. But I remember when you and Matt came out to the house, Matt, your cameraman, super great guy. You guys came out and Emma was all jazzed about going shopping at Target. And that's all she wanted to talk about. And I love watching that piece because it takes you right back to that moment, doing that initial
Yeah,
test.
she's just a ball of energy, isn't she? I don't know if she's still that way or not, but we liked her right off the bat. She was just such a great girl, and I'm hopeful that she's still that same person, even though she's 13.
She really is. But she's just 5'11"
Oh
now.
my gosh, that's hard to imagine. Yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy, huh? All right. So I remember when we first started talking, I remember after a while, you were like, this is great. We're going to find Paul, but don't you want to know who you are? And I remember thinking, I
yeah.
haven't even
Oh
thought
yeah,
about
that's
that.
right. Who am I? When was I born? Where's my family? What's my ethnic background? What's my nationality? What's my birthday? Where are my parents? Do I have any siblings? There were so many questions that popped up back then that, to my amazement, that you seemingly hadn't thought about. You were really thinking about Paul, not you.
That's all I wanted to do was find Paul, you know? So Tracy's actually an RN. Tracy, do you have any questions about the DNA and stuff?
No questions, but yeah, at the beginning in 2012, the database for Ancestry was really small because this was just getting started. So the people that had tested their DNA that was available to be matched online, it was a really small cross section at that time. And so a lot of people that were sort of the pioneers, like you were, testing and putting that DNA out there, hoping for a
I,
hit.
I'm pretty sure that us just doing that part of the story, separate from your story, Paul, helped to promote the idea of genealogical research and using Ancestry, and then other services came along. I'm sure we gave it a little bump. And now those databases have grown so huge. Uh, if you're a criminal out there, there's a pretty good chance you're going to get caught whether your personal DNA has been entered in something or not. Golden State Killer, you'll recall when he was caught through DNA research, that was the first really big case of that nature. And we did a follow up about you because it was, I think it probably got a lot of cops around the country thinking about how they could use that tool that they hadn't thought about before.
And now they're solving all kinds of cases from 20, 30,
Yeah,
40 years
exactly.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, at this point, I think the numbers say about 20% of the population has tested on some commercial DNA based platform. And pretty much that means we can find just
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
anybody
I'm
now. with that percentage of
It's
testers.
good in terms of solving crimes and solving mysteries like yours. I guess it's bad if you are a criminal and don't want to be caught, you know?
Yeah, it's got its
Yeah.
downsides for them. So when we started doing, before we were ready to air that first segment back in April, you were like, you got to tell your folks because this is going to hit. It's going to hit big, and you don't want your parents to see it on TV.
Well, that was an interesting mental process to watch outside, watch you struggling with that decision. But yeah, I did tell you you had to let them know because, what I had learned from you about the Fronczaks was they were just great people, great parents. And you had the sort of the gnawing suspicion that they knew in their hearts somewhere, but really didn't want to admit it, that their boy, that they was reunited with their boy, wasn't really their boy. You could put yourself in their position, and I know you have over the years. Your dad passed away, and I think, as I recall, you guys were not on good terms at the time he passed. But then you were able to talk to your mom, Dora, and open up. But they shut you out for like 2 years after that news was dropped, right?
Yeah, it was a long time, and it was brutal because I started this whole journey to find their child, to pay them back for the great life that they gave me. I was like proxy Paul, and I thought all I want to do is find their kidnapped child and thank them for giving me a great life. And they took it completely the wrong way. They thought I wanted to find better
Well, I thought
parents.
the letter that you wrote, gut wrenching stuff, where you explained the whole process to them and what you were trying to do, was very powerful. And I couldn't imagine that they would take it the wrong way. But as I recall, I think they did. They were just shell shocked, even though deep in their hearts they had to know at some point. I mean, I've seen the family pictures. It's not exactly a big, strong family resemblance there.
Yeah, one of these things is not
Yeah,
like the other,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And in mannerisms, and you are cut from a different cloth. It seemed like in terms of your interests, and you're a wild, crazy hippie musician, and it just didn't fit. So somewhere in their hearts they had to know, but I suspect they didn't want to admit it. They liked that you were their son. They liked the idea and loved the idea that you'd been reunited with them, and they didn't want to go anywhere else. And I recall talking to you after they got the letter, and you were pretty upset. They were upset. You were.
Yeah. So you and I decided that an email would be the best thing because my parents were in their 80s. I don't think a phone call would have done justice because they're hard of hearing. They would only hear what they want to hear and hang up. So I thought an email, they could process it, they could read it over and over and really take it in. Some people have criticized me for doing an email, but if you think about it, it's probably the best medium to use so they could actually go over and over and over. My mom called me and just started screaming at me, "How dare you open up this wound?" I hate them. I hate the media. Now you have the media all over it. And then I heard the phone shake and my dad got on. He just said, "You're an asshole," and click. That was it. And I was stunned. I mean, I'm like, I want to find your kidnapped child. Why? I don't
Yeah,
understand.
I always
I
thought
couldn't.
your motives were pure and that you wanted to help their family, and your own finding your own identity was a secondary concern. You hadn't even thought about that when we started down this road. And I guess it would probably be predictable that your parents would have a very dramatic reaction to that news. But open the wound, that phrase right there suggests to me she knew in her heart, and had just decided not to confront that over the years. She was happy the way things were.
It's funny, George. My mom and I just talked the other day, and we were talking about the kidnapping. Ever since my dad passed away in 2017, she's been much more open about talking about things. And she had this phrase, and I know she must have got it from somebody, but she said, "The lawyers and the law wanted this case closed."
That's exactly,
And
yeah.
yeah, and it's something that I don't think she would have made up. She heard that, and it stayed with her.
They had to know. I mean, there's no database at the FBI, I think, where they have a millions and millions of ears to match up as like fingerprints. It's not exactly a real scientific thing. They had to know it. But I almost applaud them. I applaud them for that decision in that it gave you a home. It took the pain away from your parents, and two mysteries solved. Let's see where it goes. And it went to a good place. Then later, as we start working on the story, the FBI was not cooperative at all. They almost reluctantly said they were reopening the case. And then when they finally solved part of it, they kind of bragged about it. Yeah, we reopened this case, and boy, we've been working hard. They were not cooperative. Did not share information. I don't think they worked very hard at all. You're the guy that did the hard labor in tracking down these clues, and then they took credit for solving basically what you solved.
Well, remember when they sent the 2 agents to my house to get a DNA sample? One FBI agent was talking about her retirement in a couple of days, and the other one had 0 cold case experience at all. So they were clearly sent there just to appease me, and I think also to shut us out of any FOIA requests, because an open case, you can't get the access,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, it didn't look like they were sending their best and brightest to work on this, or somebody who experienced in something like this. They were sending some agents so that they could tell national media, who were asking a lot of questions then, yeah, we're working on it, we're doing our best, and get off our butts. I think that was just to cover their butt kind of a thing, which is too bad. And they were actually, I think, in a lot of ways, an impediment to you finding out truth in the various tentacles of this story, which is sad to say. I've worked with the FBI a lot. I admire them. They've been so courageous in so many different ways and stories that I've been involved with, mob stuff, things like that. But this was not their finest moment by any means.
I agree totally. And it's because of you, not only from the TV and media doing your segments with you, but also doing your Coast to Coast AM radio show that we were able to team up with CeCe Moore, who is still the top genealogist
Is
in our
that how it
country.
worked? Heard it on Coast?
She heard it on Coast, yeah. Yeah, and I thought that was amazing because your audience there. I mean, remember we were getting people talking about dowsing rods, remote viewing. I mean, all kinds of. They opened up a whole new world for
And
me.
at that time, we're open to all of it. Yeah, sure. What works? I didn't have a lot of faith that dowsing rods were going to solve it, but it was, after it became sort of frustrating, that there wasn't more progress after it had received so much attention right off the bat. I kind of knew it was going to be picked up by other media. The Chicago media were all over it, and then the network folks came calling, knocking on your door. There were people calling you, Barbara Walters and others, driving you crazy. Night and
Yeah.
day, knocking on your door, calling you all hours of the day, trying to land the big Fronczak interview. It was a wild time all over again.
And the good thing about that was it allowed us to start getting tips. You started the Facebook page, Who Was Paul Fronczak? I remember starting, it was like 5 people on there, and all of a sudden it was like 1,000, and then, it kept growing and growing. Now it's like 25,000
Yeah,
people
we
on there.
openly were inviting people to drop clues if they had any information. Got a lot of leads, and almost all of them were false leads, but it was encouraging that people took an interest in the case. And then suddenly you have little DNA sleuths all over the country trying to find your background and trying to find baby Paul. It was an astonishing thing to see as it unfolded. It got so big so fast. I knew it was going to get big. It's an intoxicating story. How could it not? But wow, it surprised me even how quickly it spread and how far it went. It was international news all over again, just as the kidnapping was.
Yeah, and it's all because of you. That's the first story you did was
Well, I
perfect.
don't know.
And we kept doing segments and, you know,
I don't know that it's because of me. It's a great story. I think somebody would really have to be a bonehead to mess that up. So it was
well, I'm glad I went to you. That's all
yeah.
I can say. And then George, the flip side of this, not only do we have people like sending in tips and information, but I didn't realize the huge population of people who have no idea who they are. And so the story was inspiring them to start their own journeys.
I think
And
that's an
that's
incredible accomplishment for you. It's incredible that you stuck with it at all the various times. You could have just, okay, fine, I don't need to know more. And I recall, as you would share with me bits and pieces, I was not able to work this angle forever, and because I had other stories. You kept working though, and it seemed like every avenue, every alley you went down was pain. I have to applaud you for sticking with it because it would have ripped me apart if I had to go through even a fraction of that.
And I remember it was like a roller coaster. Like we wouldn't hear anything for weeks. Like I had 0 DNA matches on those on the DNA sites. And whenever something would happen, I'd call you, George, oh my God, check this out, right? Or you'd hear something or you'd send something over to me. And it was just like, it was those little good days that really overrode all the bad ones where nothing was
You had
happening.
mentioned about Cece, so I had never met her. You were telling me about working with her, and she was great. You allowed us to do an interview with her at one point when she had made some discoveries via DNA. I think it's 23andMe. Is that what she was working with at the time? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And she was great on camera. She's very credible, knew her stuff. That was a turning point for us too. It revived the story all over again, and suddenly the Paul Fronczak, Who is Paul Fronczak website lights up like a Christmas tree all over again, and people are pouring little tidbits in there, and the public interest in your case was reignited all over. She was great though, and was key. I don't know. You do still stay in touch with her?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. She was on Dateline. I think it was Dateline just last night.
About 23andMe going down or what?
No, no, about she helped solve
Oh,
another
good,
case.
great.
Yeah, she works with a company called Parabon now, and they're solving cases
Oh,
all over the
great.
place.
I'm gonna have to write that down.
Yeah. Yeah, she's on fire with DNA. And it was a whole new thing for us because she was just starting out. She had her team of soccer moms, and they were just doing this for free, helping people. And all of a sudden, it's like as Ancestry grew and 23andMe grew, then they started growing and started getting more work because people started realizing I need to find out who I am, And then the cops got involved, like you said, and they wanted to solve all these cases, all these old cases. So, so out of everything that we've done together, what are your takeaways that things that you think back and go, I wish we would have done it differently, or I'm glad that we did this.
I'm trying to think of what we could have done differently. I wish I could have been able to work on it full time. I think because I had other stories that were going on and other projects as well. I put a lot of time into it, Matt and I, and if I could have worked on it full time as you were, I think we could have made progress quicker. But reality is what it is, and I just what stands out of my memory is just first hearing from you this jaw-dropping story that comes out of the sky that I knew right away was going to be awesome. Then meeting you and your family in person and being overwhelmingly impressed with all three of you, and then starting the process. I learned so much about DNA and how law enforcement could use it, how it could benefit so many people. I knew it was going to be a big media event, that there would be a lot of competition from networks and newspapers and things of that sort for access to you, and that you're going to have to like hide in your home for a while because of media pound on the door and calling, and then just each step of the way, it's been an exhilarating procedure all through, and a heck of a journey. That I think when you set out, you're trying to solve a mystery for your parents. Secondary concern is finding out who you are. Tertiary concern that you had no idea would develop is helping millions of other people and alerting them to how you can go about finding who you are. You've helped so many people along the way, and neither of us, I think, saw that coming.
Yeah, even writing the first book, I never planned to write a book, but people were writing in on the Facebook page. You've inspired me to start my journey. You should write a book and really help a lot of people, and that's why we
I
started it.
remember the CNN project. We had high hopes for that. I don't know how you feel about the whole thing now. You'd watched it a bunch of times by the time I got to see it and was interviewed for it, and that was a big moment too. I really thought it would be a feature film. I thought it'd be a big screen theatrical release by now, and I think maybe it still should be. It's a heck of a story. The problem would be cramming it all into one movie. No one would believe it's true. No one would believe all this
Yeah,
stuff is true.
and yeah, 98 minutes, you can't do
You
it
couldn't
justice.
write this as a screenwriter. You couldn't write this stuff and make it up. People go, that can't. I don't believe that stuff. But it's real. All the different angles and dead ends and pain and misery and jubilation at different points. It's amazing.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, George. It's a pretty cool story.
If only there was a
So
UFO in there somewhere, it'd be, you know, we,
there still might be,
we'd be
George.
up for an
Yeah,
Oscar
keep
somewhere.
digging.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a journey. I'm so glad that you sent that message to me, and I was the guy that got the story because it got a whole different directions, and yeah, it's one of the great stories of my life. In my mental list of top 10, it's right there in the top 5 for sure. I mean, it was a heck of a journey, and it's not over yet. Maybe there's another story or two we can get.
I hope so. And George, I want to thank you for making that it could have been a really, really rough journey, but you made it fun and exciting, and we were always trying to find different angles.
Yeah, I mean, I had recall telling you about my FOIA experiences. You can't get your hopes up too much because some FOIA requests I had made, I don't get a single page of a file for 6, 7 years. I had done Benny Binion. I did Mo Dalitz, the first FOIA request for their files. It took 6 years and 7 years to get those files, and when they came in, it was like a gigantic stack, hundreds of pages. So filing FOIA requests on yours, I had no idea where it was going to go. Same thing now. We can file another FOIA request and see what happens, but they are so undermanned and overwhelmed, and they don't really like to be all that cooperative with the public or the press in the first place. So it's worth trying. I might not be around by the time we get an answer, but you will.
I hope we're both around, George. Hey, George, so any projects you'd like to promote right now? What are you working on? What's next for you?
I have one that I can't talk about at all.
Oh, I can't
The
wait now.
Netflix thing was a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
fun. When I signed on to that, it's not a lot of money. In fact, I probably made like $5 an hour, maybe if you figure it all out. It was the attraction of a global platform. The idea of covering the UFO topic, and people would see it all over the world. That's what I was going for, is to present credible information to the largest possible audience. And they had told me, I asked, well, how long is this going to take? And they said, well, maybe 30 days of shooting. It took 14 months, 14 months. And I don't get around as well as I used to, so it's a lot of slogging through airports. We went to a couple of places in Mexico. We went to several places in Brazil. I think we were in 23 or 24 states. A lot of travel over a long period of time. Talked to so many people, got great interviews, and some of the best ones never made it into the series. It came out in November of last year, and it was immediately in the top 10, and then it was in the top 5 programs in the world. It was translated into 124 languages, which,
Wow.
it took months to do that. And then after it breaks, I start getting bombarded with Instagram, email, text, tweets, phone calls. It was overwhelming. But I think they've decided, they haven't made an announcement. I don't think there's going to be a season 2, and I don't think I could handle a season 2. It's really not that kind of travel. So that's kind of sad. I'm still working at KLES. I tried to retire, I think, at the end of 2019. And
How'd that
not
work
well.
out for you?
It didn't go well. I went
Apparently
home
not.
for 2 months, and my wife Anna, you know her, Paul, and she was ready to kill me. The TV station had decided, all right, okay, you're leaving. We're going to leave your office here. We're just going to close the door and just leave it there in case you change your mind. They knew, you could keep your email, your address, your phone number, your office. They knew I'd come back, and it's 2 months it took me. And now I have an arrangement. I don't work every day, but they gave me the freedom to work on whatever story I want, whenever I want. They'd like me to be a regular contributor, and I have been. But basically, whatever I pitch them, they're good with it, which is a pretty good job to have. I'm still the chief investigative reporter. The other 2 reporters, 3 reporters on our team, they do the heavy lifting, and I get the credit for it, or blame.
Yeah, that's great though. I think they would close down if you ever left, George.
I do still do coast to coast. I've cut back on the number of appearances per month. It just it's a late night show, Paul. And you've been on there a couple times, and look, after you've been on there till 2 in the morning, that Monday morning the next day, you're not really all that productive, And so I've cut back on that. Doing a podcast with Jeremy Corbell called Weaponized, where we do almost exclusively UFO stuff, and we've kicked some butt. We've had some really good witnesses there that later get called before Congress, break some big stories, reveal leaked videos and things of that sort. So I'm busy. I'm working on a kind of a memoir,
Ooh.
Excellent. Love
UFO
that.
stuff,
Yeah.
and then you're going to be a chapter in that. When I get around to actually writing it, I've outlined it, and I'm hoping that I can settle down and focus on that for a while. But there's one other project in there that's looming that I can't talk about, and I'll tell you about it when I can.
I can't wait to hear it, George. Can I give you a quick coast to
Sure.
coast story? The first time you had me on the show, I think it was from like 10 at night till 2 in the morning. And Emma and Michelle were sleeping, of course. So I remember it was really hot out. And I sat in the car in the garage. And it was my first time doing a nighttime radio show. So I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I trusted you, and I knew that it was going to be a cool show. It was, telling my story and then taking live questions from the audience. I remember sitting in my car in just a pool of sweat. And that was the fastest 4 hours of my life. It just went by so fast. And it was done. I felt so exhilarated. It's like I wanted to go running. Like I couldn't just go in the house and go to bed. I was like so jazzed. And that was a great experience. And I was lucky enough to do, I think, 2 or 3 more episodes with you.
We're overdue then. We're overdue for another one.
Yeah, it was so much fun. George, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. It's an honor to know you, and let alone get to work with you and to accomplish everything that we did accomplish together. And I still think we have more unfinished business.
Let's talk this coming week. We get together, have a bite, and talk it over. I'll file some FOIA requests. Got to figure out what we're asking for. Might take a while. I put it in both of our names so that if I'm not around, it'll come to you as well, the answer, whenever it does. And then we should kick around what we can cover on Coast and see if we can do that again.
Sounds great, George. Thank you so much. Tracy, I'm sorry I monopolized the whole conversation.
It's not a problem. This is fascinating. You two make great interviewee and interviewer, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, George. It's been a pleasure meeting
nice
you.
to
Thanks
talk
for
to
your
you,
time.
And I'll talk to you this week, Paul.
Thank you, George.
So the report with George airs on April 25th, 2013. What happens immediately after that story airs?
Tracy, when I tell you that things were crazy, I don't think you can really fathom how crazy they were. That story aired. And like I said, George told me, be careful what you wish for. When this hits, it's going to be a shitstorm. The next day, my phone was going off like crazy. It was running. Every news outlet was picking it up. And then from there, it was going to major networks. And then I was getting calls from Matt Lauer. We have a jet ready for you. I was getting calls from Anderson Cooper. I was getting calls from all the networks. And all I kept thinking was, I just want to find Paul. I just want to find Paul. I went to work. I came back. There were reporters outside my house. So I kept driving around the block till they kind of dispersed, because I knew Michelle would not want that. That's not the direction she wanted to go in.
Sure.
So it was absolutely crazy. Like, just I think about my parents when they had reporters in their backyard and everything they went through. That's what I was going through. But I was excited because every phone call that I got, every letter, every email, to me was a chance to find the real Paul. So it was exciting in a good way. Like the media was a good thing for me. And I wanted to cast the widest net possible because I figured the more eyes on this, the better chance we have to find the real Paul. So if you want to find out what happens next, make sure you tune in for the next episode.
The Fronczak Files is created and hosted by Paul Jack Fronczak. Co-hosted by me, Tracy Hastings. Edited by Gavin Bogner. Lead genealogist, Emily Ripper. Lead historical researcher, Colleen Newhart. Social media manager, Amy Morris. Original theme music written and produced by Paul Jack Fronczak and Rick Howland. Thank you for joining us on the journey, and please remember to subscribe.